We've toured factories before, but somehow I've never even been to what is arguably the electronics manufacturing capital of the world, Shenzhen, China. So when OnePlus offered to sponsor us behind the scenes for a close-up look at their production lines for the OnePlus 6, I couldn't resist. The first line behind me here is completely focused on building the screen assembly, which includes the OLED panel, the digitizer, and the glass front, and the chassis. The OnePlus 6 uses a sandwich-style construction with an aluminum midplate and then a separate glass backplate. This first station here, after earpiece speaker grill installation, is dedicated just to inspecting the chassis that are shipped here from Foxconn. By the way, don't be surprised if you buy from someone like OnePlus and some of the components come from Foxconn. Their factories make pretty much everything. But it's down to OnePlus to control the quality of the user experience. So this guy right here is checking every single unit to ensure that it meets their standard. And he's really picky. So a tiny imperfection like this, which is very hard for us to even capture with an 8K camera, will result in this unit being sent back for a refund. Now, the defect rate for a part like this is around 0.3%, meaning that it's not a huge issue on the surface, but think about it. If a phone requires, let's say, 6 major components, and each of them is bad 0.3% of the time, then even if everything else goes perfectly, OnePlus could end up building 2 out of every 100 of their phones with some kind of imperfection. Totally unacceptable. Next, the chassis and the display assembly get fed into opposite sides of the glue applicator machine right here. It uses machine vision to precisely align them, then it applies a special glue, and then they get left in a compression device for 3 hours while the glue cures. Once these get opened up, the excess glue gets scraped away at this station here, then the USB port and the vibration motor go in, after which, wait, hold on a minute, 2 more glue scraping stations? Okay, so OnePlus is currently at a stage of production called PVT. That actually means that every single phone you see here today is gonna end up recycled at some point. And they will produce anywhere from hundreds to even thousands of phones during PVT in an effort to get things streamlined before they go to mass production. And so as part of this process, they found out that there was a 15% chance that glue would seep out again at this stage right here. So in the future, they might be able to eliminate these stations. This whole thing is a constantly evolving process. From here, the assembled displays and chassis get run through a series of test patterns to ensure some basic functionality. So under this station, we find yet again more trays full of rejected parts with flaws both big and very, very small. Finally, some protective covers get applied and the whole thing gets carted off to storage. Can I have one? Thank you. Here we're getting our first look at the rear panel as the rear camera covers and the fingerprint sensor get placed. Now the fingerprint sensor is going to be exposed to the user, so it gets precisely aligned by machine before being pressed into place. Now this next station here is another great example of the growing pains that you go through with a new device. You see this little sticker pad here? They had to add this to the rear cover because a taller portion of the PCB rubs here. Now, they can probably revise this sort of thing in the future, so this sticker might not be necessary forever. But for now, some extra protection seemed prudent. The back cover is now ready, and it's actually going to jump across the line where we'll pick up with it later on. Batteries get checked here, and then they too get passed across the U-shaped production line, leading us to the beating heart and the pretty face of every modern flagship phone. The main board, excuse me, complete with Snapdragon 845 processor, and the rear camera, which in this case is a dual 16 plus 20 megapixel affair. The completed chassis and the display from before, those actually join us here. Now it's time for some rapid fire component installation. It's basically like building a little tiny PC. So we've got ambient sensor placement, the front camera, then at a single station right here, in goes the earpiece speaker, the headphone jack, and a daughter board. Then after that, we've got, wait, really? 4 people? It takes 4 people to install and cable manage 2 dinky little RF cables? Well, actually, yes, it does, because of the importance of this step. These connectors in here are very fragile, and the placement and management of these wires is imperative to the functionality of the phone. After the ribbon cables go in for the daughter board right behind me, this protective cover right here for it goes in almost entirely automatically. Now, precise alignment here is critical because even though OnePlus doesn't advertise it, the bottom of the phone by the main loudspeaker here actually has similar waterproofing to other flagship devices. This has apparently been true since the 5, so it doesn't mean that OnePlus is going to warranty you if the water damage sticker turns red when you send it in, but it is nice to have that little bit of peace of mind. This station here is all about identifying process and supply chain issues. Every major component of the phone has a QR code that gets scanned into their system here and then stored on board the phone so that OnePlus can quickly track failures in the field back to the component supplier, assembly line, and even the QC staff that let it through. Then we get a quick power on test to ensure that base functionality looks okay, followed by the motherboard cover, which goes on in a similar fashion to the daughter board cover. Remember how I promised batteries would be joining us from across the aisle? Here they are, so they go into the phone here, followed by another computerized inspection machine where my main man here is rocking the world's greatest footwear, and this trippy machine that aligns the back panel with the front and then places it on. Look at this. Oh. These 2 pressers here, and then this little roller doodad ensure that the back panel is fully adhered, and then the finished phones get a final visual check to ensure that everything is bueno. This also includes a little wipe down in most cases. So that's it. We're done, right? So why isn't this video over? Well, do you guys remember how I promised that over 100 people would touch one of these before it left the factory? This is only like 70-ish. So after software gets loaded, every device gets a special code entered into its numpad to enter testing mode, and then goes through a shockingly thorough QA screening process. So at stage 1, they test the flash with this little black box here. Then they record a video while the phone is sitting in a mechanical shaker to ensure that its image stabilization is working as expected. Stage 2 has testers snapping a photo for comparison against a reference image that is stored in the QA software. And then stage 3 actually lifts up the phone against this little metal barrier here to ensure that the proximity sensor is working as intended. Stage 4 checks autofocus on both cameras by moving the phone back and forth from a target, while stage 5 screens for dead pixels on the camera sensor or dust under the cover. At stage 6, every phone goes into a little mini RF chamber for GPS and Wi-Fi testing. And then at stage 7, antenna operation is verified. But we are far from done. So OnePlus actually started pre-installing screen protectors on their phones to protect against shipping breakage on the OnePlus X a few years ago. And this has continued ever since. So this goes on right here. Then we gotta move over to the other side of the line. This guy's not just chilling and listening to music, he's actually making sure that the headphone jack, when it's plugged in or unplugged, behaves correctly. And then his partner here is making sure that the RGB indicator LED and screen brightness control are functioning normally. The microphone and speaker are both tested in here to ensure that they meet spec. This apparently has the highest failure rate on finished devices at about 1 in 1,000. And if the speaker is misaligned, or really if the device fails any of these tests, it will get sent for disassembly for them to try again. All right, almost done here. Just 5 more stations. So here, both the selfie and the rear camera get checked again, this time by a human, for any weirdness that the automated tests might have missed. Fun story, OnePlus actually ran into some customer complaints. People thought that their phones were refurbished because they had the pictures these guys were taking in the factory on them. No, it's fine, they just forgot to wipe them. No big deal. Moving right over here, the G sensor gets checked by this trippy little rotating table, and NFC functionality is verified. Both normal functionality and high-speed dash charging functionality are checked here. And then this machine uses infrared depth sensing to ensure that the curvature of the back of the phone is to spec, bringing us finally to one more visual inspection and wipe down before the finished phones are placed in protective sleeves and prepared to be sent to packaging. So each one of these, just to give you guys some idea of the volume here, each one of these contains about 50 phones completely ready to go. Oh, I don't know where I got this from. The environmental stress room, presumably that's what that says, I have no way of knowing, is not as impressive to look at, but it's really important. So they've got a number of different chambers in here, ones that are designed to rapidly increase and decrease temperature from 75 all the way to -40 for up to a week at a time. Ones that are designed to deliver very high temperatures at 95% humidity for up to 500 hours at a time. And they've got this raindrop test, which isn't actually running right now, but we can open it up. They would expect a phone under this shower for 100 hours to function normally after a few days of dry out time. Dang. But it's not as outright impressive as room number 2, where they do 1 meter, 1.5 meter, and 1.8 meter drop tests onto a slab of marble with a QA technician checking the phone's functionality after each fall. So they do each side of the phone 2 times, and they accept 10% cracked screens, but they expect the entire rest of the phone's functionality, including the camera, to remain unimpacted, so to speak, by this type of torture. I mean, that seems reasonable enough to me. I mean, most people would have to be like walking around like this with a phone on their head to drop it from 1.8 meters all the time. And that one isn't even the most strenuous test in this room. This tumbler right here, check this out. Oh, you hear that? This guy drops up to 4 phones, 1 meter in any orientation, a total of 150 times. Now, OnePlus does expect some aesthetic damage here, but once again, more than 10% cracked screens means it is back to the drawing board. Oh, that's hard to listen to. We saved the best for last. This is the endurance lab. So in room 1, we found all kinds of treats. This guy right here can press on the USB-C and headphone jacks and remove and insert cables 10,000 times. After that stress test, the phone will be taken out, disassembled, and inspected for structural damage that could be reinforced in future designs. This guy right here is a mechanical butt that puts 25 kilograms of pressure onto the top of the phone 1,000 times. This is for careless people who keep their phone in their back pocket. This one right over here, this one's actually kind of depressing. This is the 10 centimeter drop tester. It works in conjunction with the edge tester that's over there to pick up and drop each phone 10,000 times from the back, 10,000 times from the front, then another 2,000 times on each edge for a total of 28,000 minor drops. They expect the phones to survive this kind of treatment. It's actually kind of cathartic to watch. So that's pretty much it. A huge thank you to OnePlus for sponsoring us out here to take a look at the behind the scenes production of the OnePlus 6. And a big thank you to you for watching. If you guys disliked this video, you know where that button is, but if you liked it, hit like, get subscribed, and maybe consider checking out where to buy the stuff we featured at the link in the video description. Also linked down there is our merch store, which has cool shirts like this one, as well as our community forum, which you should totally join. Oh, I forgot the... much better.